The island of Maui is the second largest island in the Hawaiian archipelago behind Big Island and the third most populous Hawaiian island behind Oahu and Big Island. Maui, like the other Hawaiian islands, was formed as the result of volcanic activity, and Maui's landmass is the result of two overlapping shield volcano flows converging together to form the island's distinct shape. Notably, due to this unique shape and the relative location of its volcanic highlands, the climate on the island varies considerably, and Maui notably features 6 distinct microclimates, although for the sake of brevity I won't delve into the specifics of all of them in this video. Generally speaking, however, the southeastern section of the island sees the most annual rainfall, along with the highlands that surround the island's volcanoes. However, in stark contrast, the island is also home to dry, semi-arid, wind-swept grassy lowlands as well, which are mostly concentrated in the western and central portions of the island, with these areas seeing significantly less annual rainfall overall, particularly during the dry season, which occurs in the summertime. These conditions also pose a high fire risk to residents of the area, as the dry grasslands and high winds are ideal conditions for fire to spread across quickly. Further compounding the risk of wildfires is the overall decline in agriculture's importance in the island's economy, which has resulted in many former agricultural fields being left vacant and subsequently becoming overgrown with grass. In early August of 2023, Maui's annual summertime dry season was in full swing, and officials would forecast an above-normal risk for wildfires in western central Maui, as well as in the area surrounding the seaside town of Lahaina, located on the northwestern coast of the island. Also contributing to the above-average risk of wildfires in August was a high-pressure weather system caused by the formation of Hurricane Dora approximately 700 miles to the south. As a result of the high-pressure system, the weather on Maui in early August was particularly warm, dry, and sunny. As Hurricane Dora's strength intensified in the south, the difference from the low pressure of Hurricane Dora and the high pressure area surrounding it also intensified, which resulted in an increase in the strength of trade winds, as well as creating strong gusting gradient winds which lashed against the Hawaiian archipelago. On August 4th, 2023, the high risk of fires due to these conditions would become apparent as a 35-acre brush fire ignited near the Kahului Airport's runway, subsequently causing the airport to delay all of the day's remaining scheduled flights until August 11th. By later that evening, however, local firefighters had managed to keep the blaze contained. However, this fire would prove as just a mere taste of things yet to come on the island over the course of the next few days. On August 6th, Maui was hit by a further dry air system stemming in origin from the eastern Pacific Ocean, which further lessened the possibility of precipitation in the upcoming days. On August 7th, the increased dry air from the eastern Pacific, combined with the high pressure system stemming from Hurricane Dora to the south, would combine to create further atmospheric stabilization, which subsequently resulted in strong winds with powerful gusts and overall exceptionally dry conditions between August 7th and August 9th. The National Weather Service's forecast for August 7th through August 9th would predict constant wind speeds of between 26 and 40 knots, with gusts of up to 52 knots, or potentially even higher. As the evening hours of August 7th progressed, the wind gusts too increased in their strength, as they lashed against the island's infrastructure throughout the evening and into the early morning hours of August 8th, 2023. These whipping gusts of wind would subsequently begin to down a number of power lines across central and western Maui, which would in turn result in the outbreak of the first fire reported on August 8th, which was first reported at 12:29 a.m. after a tree had downed power lines in the town of Kula, which is located in central Maui. The spread of the flames from the fire was spurred by the dry winds, and it would begin to rapidly spread from its point of origin, which subsequently resulted in an ordered evacuation for residents of the town at 3:34 a.m. that morning. This fire would fortunately not result in any casualties, although 16 buildings and an area spanning approximately 1,000 acres were completely scorched by its flames. However, while the fire in Kula was the first reported wildfire on August 8th, it would not be the only fire reported, nor the most devastating fire reported that very same day. Throughout the early morning hours of August 8th, 2023, the seaside town of Lahaina, located on Maui's northwestern coastline, would experience high, straight-line winds that would exceed the National Weather Service's forecast, including powerful gusts that frequently exceeded speeds of 70 knots. The barrage of powerful wind gusts would batter the town of Lahaina throughout the morning hours, which ultimately would result in a power line pole located in the northeastern portion of the town on Lahaina Luna Road, directly across from the Lahaina Intermediate School, snapping, which subsequently set the surrounding dry grasslands ablaze. The fire was soon noticed by local residents and was initially reported to authorities at 6:37 a.m. that morning. Local fire officials would arrive on scene just mere minutes later and would swiftly set to work in their efforts to contain the fire and prevent it from spreading further, and ordered the evacuation of a few homes nearby the origin of the fire. By 9 a.m. that morning, fire officials announced that they had completely contained the fire within a 3-acre area, and thus no further evacuations in the Lahaina area were ordered over the following hours. However, as the day wore on, the intensity of the dry winds and the ferocity of its gusts would continue to grow, and by the early afternoon, firefighters were struggling to keep the fire under control as it would again begin to spread. By 3:30 p.m. on August 8th, 2023, propelled by the whipping dry winds, the fire would begin to rapidly spread from within the containment area to the surrounding grasslands, which subsequently would cause officials to order the closure of Lahaina Bypass, as well as evacuations of residential neighborhoods nearby the affected area, and officials would further order residents of the western side of town to shelter in place in their homes, as they would again attempt to contain the spread of the fire as it engulfed the residential neighborhoods in the eastern portion of town. Fire crews would attempt to slow the spread of the blaze as it began to spread rapidly westward towards the shore, and found that their efforts to extinguish the flames were impeded by low water pressure from fire hydrants, which had resulted from melting pipes within the burning homes, causing a number of significant leaks to spring. By 4:46 p.m. that afternoon, the inferno had rapidly engulfed the mostly residential eastern portion of Lahaina and had reached and spread across Highway 30, which separated the eastern part of town from the main part of town. Around this time, largely unaware residents in the main portion of Lahaina would begin to grasp the severity of the situation and began to frantically scramble into their vehicles as they evacuated their homes of their own volition, still without any orders from officials to do so. However, as the panicked townsfolk had not been afforded much time to flee their homes, the town's roads would soon become clogged with traffic, packed with cars full of locals, fleeing from the rapidly encroaching flames. The whipping winds would continue to propel the spread of the fire as the minutes ticked by, engulfing many of the cars caught in traffic jams in its path as it continued to spread throughout the town of Lahaina. Some occupants in these cars would abandon their vehicles as the flames approached them, which further increased the clogged traffic for those who instead opted to remain within their vehicles. Less than an hour after the flames had crossed Highway 30 at 5:45 p.m. that evening, the fire had completely engulfed the town as the flames now reached the shoreline, which forced several residents that had abandoned their vehicles after having witnessed nearby cars catching fire and exploding to flee into the water of the ocean to escape the encroaching flames. Upon learning that people had been forced to flee into the ocean, the U.S. Coast Guard was dispatched to rescue these residents and successfully rescued 17 survivors from within the water, while the flames continued to spread and engulf the northern and southern parts of town. The intensely hot flames would reach temperatures of 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which notably was hot enough that it melted the engine blocks of cars that had been caught in its path, which resulted in pools of melted aluminum forming beneath the wreckage of many burnt-out cars that had been caught within the inferno. And furthermore, this intense heat had also melted granite inside many of the burnt-out buildings as well. As the evening hours continued to pass, the fire engulfing Lahaina continued to burn brightly, as evidenced by several photos taken from elsewhere on the island that documented the bright glow of the flames emanating from the town. That same evening, on August 8th, another fire would erupt north of the town of Kihei and would begin to spread towards the town, propelled by the power of the dry winds, and subsequently an evacuation of the town was then ordered by authorities, as well as further evacuations of several other nearby communities. And over the course of the next few days, firefighting crews were ultimately able to contain this fire from spreading further. The devastation wrought by the fire in the town of Lahaina, however, was widespread and immense, as 2,207 buildings within the historic seaside town were completely destroyed by the inferno, and as the flames burned out, officials would begin to comb the remnants of the town for survivors and casualties. The first publicly released casualty count from the fire would be announced on August 11th, 2023, with officials stating that they had discovered the remains of 67 deceased people during initial searches of the affected area, noting that they had not searched the interiors of buildings or any car interiors for remains, and stated that this figure would likely increase over the coming weeks as specialized FEMA disaster crews arrived to assist local officials in their search efforts, as many thus far uncounted victims were believed to have been trapped in and died in their cars as they desperately attempted to escape the flames. On August 12th, the official casualty count resulting from the incident would indeed rise to a total of 93 deceased people, with officials noting that only 3% of the affected area had been searched thus far. On August 15th, authorities searching the area for survivors and casualties would discover a home on the west side of town with 60 people sheltering together inside who had miraculously managed to survive the inferno, which would serve to greatly reduce the number of residents still counted as missing by officials. By September 7th, 2023, officials announced that they had searched 100% of single-story residential homes in Lahaina, resulting in the death toll further rising to a reported 115 deceased people, with 110 people still reported as missing. However, as authorities conducted DNA testing of the badly burned remains of many of their discovered victims, they would uncover that some of the recovered remains had actually belonged to the same people, and thus on September 15th, the official casualty count was reduced from 115 to 97 victims. However, as the months passed following the fire, the death toll would again begin to rise as more victims of the fire were discovered, with the official casualty count as of the time of making this video, nearly a year after the fires, standing at 102 people deceased, with 2 people still reported as missing. Ultimately, in the wake of the wildfires, the town of Lahaina had clearly suffered the most widespread destruction, with damages inflicted estimated at $6 billion, and both local officials and the area's power provider, Hawaiian Electric, would find themselves under fire from outraged residents of the town. Local officials were lambasted for their handling of the incident and their failure to properly alert residents of Lahaina of the fire that would ultimately engulf the entire town, as most residents had been without power for a majority of August 8th and had no warning and almost no time to evacuate from their homes, only becoming aware of the blaze after seeing flames or smelling smoke firsthand. Furthermore, officials were criticized for opting to forgo utilizing the network of sirens installed across Maui to warn residents of incoming tsunamis, to alert residents to evacuate the town as well. However, officials would counter that they had not utilized the sirens because the disaster did not originate from the sea, and stated that residents had been instructed to flee inland upon hearing the sirens, which would have sent them fleeing into the wall of incoming flames. Officials would further state that their failure to properly inform residents of the spreading fire had also come as a result of the rapid escalation of the spread of the fire, as it was believed to have been contained until just 2 hours before the spreading flames had engulfed the town all the way to the shoreline. Additionally, officials were further criticized for their response to the ecological damage inflicted by the fire, as many residents of the area would go weeks without potable tap water, as contaminants from the fire had subsequently seeped into the region's drinking water supply. Ultimately, these wildfires would prove to be the deadliest wildfires in the United States since the 1918 Cloquet fires, and the deadliest natural disaster in the state of Hawaii's history. Thank you all for watching.